Hi there. In this video tutorial I'll be showing you how to import a terrain to UDK. I promised to do that a while ago when I did my UDK tutorials regarding how to create a terrain for CryEngine, which is also a technique that could be used to any kind of game engines. And if you haven't seen these video tutorials, you could find them on my YouTube channel. So in this video tutorial I'll be showing you how to import a terrain that you made in World Machine. I'll show you how to set up the materials for it and have it rendered properly in the Unreal Development Kit. Now what we're going to do here, we're going to start off from a color map and a height map. So both of these are in 4096 by 4096 resolution. They're not the same ones that I did in the previous tutorials, but it should be easy to start off from this base here. Now, first of all, what you need to keep in mind is that Epic Games set up some sort of rules with their new terrain system, which is called Landscape, and you need to use a proper size for your height map. So in order to know which size your height maps needs to be, you have to check out the documentation on their website, and we're gonna see which size we'll be going for. Let's see, it should be here. There you go, landscape creating. Now if I scroll down here, you can see there you have a recommended landscape sizes. And over here, we probably want to go for something like this here. So 1009 by 1009. Now, since we have a 4096 by 4096 height map that we generated out from World Machine, we probably want to resize this height map to a 1009 by 1009 height map. Now, in order to do so, you have to re-import this height map here into World Machine. It is very simple to do so. All you have to do is just create a file input node, load your height map, which is on a folder that's on my desk. There it is. Open it up. We can see that it is loaded here in the preview window, but we need to probably set up a good range for the altitude, something that might look natural and something that would fit your terrain. And I'm probably gonna use a custom height of 1600, but let's see how it looks in 3D video, 3D window. There you go, seems acceptable to me. Now later on, what you have to do is set up the export size or the resolution at which your terrain is going to be rendered at. Now, since we saw earlier that 1009 is the resolution that we'll be going for, you can go for high resolutions for bigger terrains, but we're going to use this one here. We're going to type this value in. Well, I already did before, just for a try. You just click on custom and type 1009. There you go. Bold for test. And there it is. Okay. Now we're gonna export this height map that's at 1009 resolution to the format that's acceptable by the landscape system in the UDK. Now the landscape system, let's see, which format is needed for the landscape system. Just go here and import, and there it is. It supports .raw and .r16 formats. And what's available here in World Machine, go to favorites and height output, link these together, open it up. Now the .raw16 is the R16 R16 format that's in the UDK. We probably want to go for this format here. Okay. Now set up where your height map's going to be saved. So I'm still using the same terrain file on the desk, and I'm just going to create here a UDK export folder. That way I can have all my stuff organized properly. I'm going to name this terrain underscore UDK, and underscore 1009. That way you can have a good idea which size this height map is at, and save. Okay, then press OK. Build your terrain. Done. Then write output to disk. It says that it's been done successfully. Alright. Guess we can exit this world machine here. Okay, in the UDK here, what we're gonna do now is just import the height map first. Now, I'm gonna start. You just click on the landscape mode and scroll all the way down. There's a height map import, and click on 3 dots. And go to my desk and find where the height map's been exported. There it is. Open it up. Okay, it automatically detects at which size is your height map. You got the ability to select the amount of components on your height map. I'm just gonna keep it, let's see, 1 section per component. I'm gonna try this out. Now, if you wish to know exactly what components are for, or exactly which size you're going to use regarding the options when you import into the UDK, I'd suggest you just read the documentation here. You got all the detail you need, everything you need to know about the landscape system and how the amount of components can affect your performances in the UDK. Alright, now let's go back to our UDK system, landscape system. Okay, so I'm probably going for a 4 section per component here, and then I do click and create landscape. Okay. Now the first thing that you'll notice is that your landscape's heights are a bit too pumped up. So what we're going to do here is just resize our landscape in the z-axis. Now just double click or just select your landscape and press on F4 to open up the properties window, and in the display tab you just change the Z value. I'm probably gonna try it out to 128 and see how it looks. Seems to be acceptable in this case. So as you can see here, it's 128, 128, 128. Alright. Now what's really good with the UDK is that you have a lot of control over your terrain. You can resize your terrain in 3 axes and the collisions get updated with the size of your terrain. It's really, really nice. Okay, close the property windows. Now in our content browser, we're going to import our color map, the one that we have here. This is the color map that we generated from World Machine, and which we worked on Photoshop. It looks like this when we zoom in. So this is a 4096 by 4096 color texture that we're going to use here on our UDK landscape system. Now we're going to import this texture here. Terrain, there it is. Let's see, I'm gonna create a package called terrain 01 compression alpha, just to make sure that there is no alpha map that's coming with your texture map. That way you can save some texture memory, unless it is intended to be imported with a alpha map. There you go, texture group world. Just checking the options if they're correctly set up. And I'm probably gonna check this box here, defer compression, to save some time for the video. That way I'll let the UDK do the compressions later, because it might take some time to import high resolution texture, since when you import a texture, what the UDK does is basically create a .ddes version of this texture that's in the going to be used in the game engine. Now there it is. Okay, now what we're gonna do here now is create a material for our landscape in order to have our texture overlay on this terrain here. Now we're gonna right click on our texture here that we imported and create a new material. Press OK. Alright. And then link this to the diffuse node. This is the material editor in the UDK. It is extremely powerful and probably one of the big pluses of the UDK. Now when you link this texture sample, what I did here is just to create a texture sample, just press on T while selecting on the content browser my texture here. While placing on T, just left click and it creates the texture sample. Now let's press on this green check. There it is. Now exit the material editor and double click on your terrain, go to landscape tab, select your material, which is here, and enter your landscape material. Okay, now the first thing that you notice is that your color map is not tiled properly or not projected properly in your terrain. Now in order to have this work properly, you're gonna have to create an extra node that's going to give the proper coordinates of your texture to tile properly, project properly in your terrain. Now let's check for the coordinates. Now we have here a texture coordinate node that we probably want to use. Now link these together to the UV's entry here and select your node, and you got a UV tiling. Now let's see, it's not the one that I'm looking for, probably another. Need to find the proper node that I'm gonna work with. Probably to layer coordinates, and there it is. Okay. Now link these together. Now check the mapping scale. Now you need to keep in mind that our texture here is at 4096 by 4096, and the height map here that we're using, the terrain size at 1009 by 1009. Now let's try out 1009 and press check. Now with this, it should work properly. Okay. Now we have here our color texture properly projecting on our terrain. Okay. Now what we need to do is probably tweak the LOD, the level of detail of our terrain. If I go to my wireframe window, we can see how the level of detail is affecting the terrain. And what's good about this in the UDK is you have lots of control over it. Here, when you double click on your terrain, you got a max LOD level. When you go to 0, that's the maximum level of detail you got on your terrain. That's the terrain, high resolution terrain, without having LOD affecting it. Okay. Now back to my wireframe view. When I go to 1, you can see how the LODs are being changed. 2. See the amount of tessellation going down over there. And you probably want to find a good value which gives you a good compromise between quality and performance. And it is really important to keep in mind to have a good silhouette going on your terrain. Having good silhouette on your terrain gives you a big plus visually when you're trying to make consistent environment. Alright, I'll probably going to keep the value of 1. It's probably a bit too high res, but let's say with today's computer it is acceptable. It all depends on what you're going to have on your environment. If your environment is covered with lots of vegetation and models, you're probably going to have to use higher value here in the LOD max level and have low poly count in the distance. But since here we're just working on terrain, I'm going to just use a value of 1, that way I can have some good silhouettes and show you some good results for the video tutorial. Okay. Now, the next thing that we're going to do here, we're going to edit our material in order to have detailed textures on our terrain. Right now, all we have is just a basic color map. We're going to have to edit and import detailed textures here and add them, link them together in order to have proper details here showing up. Now, as you look at a terrain, the first thing that we're probably going to use is just grass, a grass texture, detailed grass texture, some rock, and probably some soil with medium-sized rocks to break up the whole thing. Now, what I have already did some post-production work before. I got my textures ready with each texture, detailed texture having its normal map. These are all tileable textures. We're going to change these in Photoshop and have them display properly on our terrain. If you watch the previous video tutorials, you notice that the CryEngine is using an overlaying method to display properly the detailed textures with the big color map here we're watching. Since we already have all the color information coming from this big texture map, we're going to overlay this color information on top of these detailed textures. That's going to tile all around on this terrain, all over the terrain. Now, what's cool about the new versions of the UDK? I'm using here the November version, the latest one. They added new functions that mimic the, for example, here we got a bunch of functions that mimic the Photoshop operations for blending modes. When you blend a layer together, you got to overlay, difference, leaving a burn. All this stuff here is really awesome. I wished before they added this, I wish they could add it. I even had to like write the whole custom nodes myself. It wasn't working the best. It didn't look the best, better than these ones here. Now here we have a blend overlay nodes, which is really awesome, and this is the one that we're going to use in order to overlay this color texture big color over detailed texture maps. Now let's grab this node here and create it. Alright, what we're going to do first, before we move any further, we're going to import these textures inside the UDK. Okay? And later on I'll show you some tricks in order to save some texture memory. Since from now on, with this kind of terrain system, the one I'm using here, using a big color map to cast this color information on our detail textures, we probably want to, for example, use grayscale detailed texture maps. We're gonna discard the color information and put each of this detailed texture map in one channel of one big texture map. I'll show you how we're going to do this in Photoshop. Now we're going to open our detailed textures here in Photoshop. Alright. So these two textures here are coming from cgtextures.com, and this one is a custom texture that I made in Box. Just painted some stuff, and with the new tileable texture system, it was really easy to do. I'll probably show you how to do something similar to this later on in the future in another video tutorial. Now what we're going to do here is just basically desaturate these textures. Since we won't need this color information here on these textures, the color information is going to be coming from this big giant texture map that we have on our terrain. Okay. Now I'm going to save these as a TGA. Back to my terrain, UDK export folder. Now, Photoshop gives you two options to save this as 16-bit, 24-bit, and 32-bit. Now, the two formats here, resolution we're going to use is 24. If you had an alpha channel in your texture, you probably want to use a 32-bit, but in this case, we don't have any alpha maps in our texture. We're just going to keep it at 24-bit. Okay. Now we're going to import these textures that we exported from Photoshop to UDK. Just open the content browser and import these textures. Set the compression on alpha and defer compression to save some time. Just OK to all. Alright, we got our three textures here. We probably want to import the normal maps as well. There they are. This time compression setting is going to be switched to TC underscore normal map. Check the fair compression. Texture group for the loading system, world normal map, to optimize the whole thing just a bit. Okay, we have all this here. Now we're going to import these textures into our landscape material. That way you can easily recognize my texture samples. Rock. Okay. Now, if you go to the landscape toolbox, you notice that you have the ability to paint your layers right here. And you have the ability to add them from your materials. Now, in order to create your layers, let's say we have a rock, grass, and soil layer. So it's going to be three layers that we're going to create. You have to create a layer node here. Let's see. Probably this one. Nope, not this one. There you go, layer height. Yeah, there it is. Now we're gonna link, for example, this one here. This is the rock sample, and this one's gonna be named rock. Okay, this is very important. That way later on when you create a layer, you just name it rock. The same name as this node here is going to be created for rock, and it's going to have the rock texture showing up here, and it's going to help the landscape toolbox recognize which node it needs to take in. I'm just going to copy this nodes, Control C, Control V, and name this one grass. Now this rock here layer goes down here to base, and this grass here goes down to layer. Do the same again. Soil. Now this is our brick color map. This is our detail textures. Okay, now we're going to overlay together the output of the detail textures with the big color map. And this result goes to diffuse entry. Okay. Save this. Now it's probably going to change here. It's going to go all dark. There we go. Probably wanna change these outputs. Now, if you think in Photoshop, when you overlay a color texture on top of grayscale one, you probably want to use the grayscale layers at the bottom and the color one at the top. I'm guessing that this is how it works here in the UDK as well. Alright, you don't have any artifacts showing up right now, so it should be working properly. Now, since we here, I think we're done here for the detail texture. Now we're going to create a layers that we're going to paint all over the terrain. Now check the edit, okay, and create your layer. Let's start off with grass. It needs to be the exact same name, and click on a little plus, and there it is. We're gonna also add rock. There it is. And soil. Okay, now select your grass layer. Use a big brush. Tool strength to the max. And while pressing on Control, just wait a bit and click on the terrain, it's gonna start painting. Your layer. Just disable the autosave. So right now I'm working on the elite view. Later on I'm gonna import a directional dominant lights to add some eye candy to the whole scene. Alright, now this is done. Now the first thing that you notice is that the tiling of your detail texture is a bit too big. If I go in game, it's probably going to be gigantic and really blurred out. Now we're going back to our material editor and we're going to change the tiling of each detail texture. Now in order to do so, all you gotta do is bring in a texture coordinate node. There it is. And link this to each UV entries of your detail texture node. And then all I gotta do is probably increase your tiling by 4, for example, and we're gonna see how it looks, and maybe you probably want to increase it a bit more. Alright, it looks like this. Okay, we probably want to now import our normal maps and have them probably display on here on the terrain. If you remember, we imported the normal maps that came with the detail textures. We're going to add them to a terrain material and link them here to the normal map output input. Now it's going to be the exact same method that we did here for this diffuse texture. I'm just going to copy the whole thing here, Control C, and paste, and move them down here. Then select normal map for the rock, select the rock nodes, and press on the green arrow right here. There it is. This one is for the grass. Do the same again. This one is for the soil. Do the same here as well. And then this goes to our normal input. Press here on the green arrow. Alright. Now, in order to have your normal maps displaying, you probably want some lighting onto your terrain, onto your level. Right now we're using the unlit view. If I go to delete, there's no lights. Now we're going to add a light into the level. So you go to the content browser, actual classes, and you go to the lights tab, open it up, and all the way down to dominant directional light. You click on this, and then go right click here, add dominant light. Move it up. If I zoom in, get closer, there it is. That's my entity over there. And I probably want to scale it up a bit later on. That way later on I can easily find my entity faster. And if I move the direction, I can already see that the normal for glass is already being applied to the terrain. But we probably want to paint the add the ones for rock and soil, add some detail here and there. Now, first of all, I'm gonna just change some settings here. Let's say for the ambient light, I want it to be less darker than this and have it be a bit more natural. In order to do so, just go to the world properties, then rendering. I'm guessing that this is it or not. It should be light maps environment or light mass settings, environment color. Let's go for something a bit bluish to simulate the ambient light color. Okay. A bit, and then here in our sun setting, I'm probably going to increase a bit the brightness of the light, the sun, up to 3, and go for something a bit more yellowish or orange. Alright. Okay, there it is. Now I probably want to paint a rock layer and soil layers. Now in order to do so, all you have to do is open up your landscape toolbox, select your layer, and change your brush settings a bit. And paint down the layer. Now the first thing that you notice is that there's a lot of stretching here going on. Now, a few days ago I discovered that the UDK can project textures in 3 axes just like in the CryEngine, which allows you to get minimal stretching on your meshes or terrain. I did a test before and I noticed that it doesn't work yet on the landscape. It works on the all-terrain system and on meshes, but apparently Epic Games didn't implement this for the landscape system, or maybe it is just a bug, or maybe I'm just doing it the wrong way. But just for the sake of tutorial, I'm just going to show you how to import your terrain and have proper material set up for it for the moment. Later on, if I ever learn how it works, or find out how to make it project properly, I'll show you in another video tutorial. Probably want to use the unlit view for the moment. Now you can see with this kind of technique, it is extremely fast and simple to have nice blendings between the textures and have it look all consistent. Looks very natural. And when you use a detailed texture, it doesn't look out of place since all the color information is already done before and looks correct on the terrain. I need to answer the door. I'll be right back. Alright. Let's try out the soil layer a bit. There it is. Now you can see how easy and fast it is to work with proper material setup and proper textures, detailed textures. Probably want to turn off the shadows for the moment. Now, now that you've seen that it is extremely fast and easy to create a material, problem material setup for your landscape to have it look convincing, and as well add your detail textures as you can see here, I'm probably going to show you a trick how to save some texture memory. Now, if you remember properly, we have three grayscale textures that we're using as a detailed texture map. We could probably like merge these all together and have only one texture that we could use as detailed texture map. That's gonna be split into three inside the material editor. That will help us save lots of texture memory. Instead of using three different textures at 2048 by 2048, we'll have only one texture. So it's basically going to be a three in one. So in order to do so, we're probably going to have to merge these together in Photoshop and have them store them in different channels, in the red, green, and blue channel. And later on, do an output and mask a channel, the channel that you're going to use, and link this together into your layer system. Now we're going inside Photoshop. We have all the textures here opened up, and since I've noticed that the textures might be a bit too dark here, we're probably going to have to brighten up just a bit, brighten them up just a bit. Now here I'm just going to brightness first. I'm going to add a 20, or yeah, 25. That way the color information is going to bump up a bit more. Alright. Now I'm going to create a new file, a new texture, 2048 by 2048. There it is. Go to channels. Probably going to switch this to RGB color. That way it creates the three channels here. And I'm going to Control A, Control C, select all, copy, and go to my red channel here and paste it. Alright. Do the same here for rock. Pass it into the green channel. Okay, and this one, no, that was a soul. This one is a rock. And this one in the blue. Alright, looks like this in the end. Now we're going to save this as a TGA. Now, let's see. It was grass, soil, rock. Grass, soil, rock. Textures. Underscore detail. Save. Now we're going to import that into our UDK. See where did I save this? In UDK export folder. There it is. Open it up. Compression on alpha again. And defer compression on. Okay. And there it is. Now let's bring this into material editor. Now what we could do is just delete all these since we don't need these anymore. And replace it. And since we want to save, probably want to save some instructions on our material editor, it's basically shader that we're working on. Probably going to delete that texture coordinate node and just use only one instead of using two. It's very important to optimize your materials. The less instructions you have in your material, the faster it's going to be to render, for your GPU to render out the shader here. And now what we're going to do is basically link each channel to the proper layer. And in order to do so, we probably want to bring in a component mask node. bring this here to layer. Now I probably want to mask the proper. Now, if we remember properly, in Photoshop, red was grass. This one, and since red is grass, just check red and link this to rock, to grass. Bring link. This goes down and copy. Pass here. Go to Photoshop again. Soil. Soil is green. I'll check the red and check G, green. And blue is rock. Save. Now what we've done here, we've saved a lot of texture memory. We basically saved, instead of using three 2048 by 2048 texture maps, we're just using only one, and that only one is enough to show off 3 detailed texture maps. And we'll still have the same results in the end. Alright. Now, probably in a next tutorial, I'll probably try to find out how to have a fade to distance function. In order to have the detail textures fade at a longer distance. That way you won't notice the tiling too much, because at a certain point when you have a detail texture that's tiling a lot, you'll notice that the detail textures tile and doesn't look that great in your environment. So you want to have an environment that looks like a painting. You probably want to have the detail texture showing at a certain radius from the camera, the player's camera, and have them fade into the color map at a certain distance. Alright, now this sums us up. I think we're done here. I've showed you how to import a terrain to UDK. I showed you that it is possible to scale up or down your terrain by just going to the properties of your terrain. I showed you that you could change the LOD of your terrain as well. I showed you how to create a material for your UDK landscape system and how to save some texture memory with this kind of material that we're using. Okay, I hope that you liked the tutorial, and sorry for the long wait. I'll show you some other tutorials later on in the future when I find something interesting to show off. Thank you for watching.